right, let's see. It's 8:01, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Um, Welcome to the Arches Modeling Interest Group. If you didn't get the memo on that, we've changed our name to instead of the Modeling User Group, we are now the Arches Modeling Interest Group. And the reason for that is we've just kind of for the Arches community, we've made a kind of a global decision to change it from user to interest groups because we think that it's much more inclusive and friendlier for those who aren't already Arches users. um, so that those who are still evaluating Arches, who are kind of dipping their toe into the Arches pool, can feel welcome to come to any of the interest meetings to learn more about Arches. And in this particular case, it's the Modeling Interest Group, as a reminder, is a group to learn more about modeling in Arches. And today's topic is on the new controlled list manager, which is part of Arches controlled lists, which was the most recent release was version 1.1 of Arches controlled lists. It's an Arches extension, and we'll be delving into that today. But before we do that, it's going to be actually a little bit different than what we normally do because we will be having a discussion. We will be sharing our screen at times, but it will really be more of a discussion between all of us, hopefully, to talk a little bit more about to learn and then to ask questions about the control list manager since it's new and what the implications are for existing Arches implementers and even for new ones. So that's something that we'll be covering today. But I dropped the agenda into the chat today. You'll see there it says today's agenda. And normally we have introductions and announcements. And so I'm going to start with let's go ahead and start with introductions. If And I'll just say that if you don't want to be introduced, or if there's a reason that you can't participate in that, you can just let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and start. Hi, Ilo. I'm Annabelle Enriquez. I'm the current chair of this group, the Modeling Interest Group, with the GCI Arches team. And I've worked on this project since 2013, and in particular worked on the modeling aspects of it. And actually, I'm going to ask something for everybody, is if you could also say what you hope to get from today's meeting when you do your introduction, that would be awesome. All right, and we'll do this popcorn style where once you introduce yourself, um, pick someone else to introduce themselves. All right, I'm going to start with Eric.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Kanza. My background's in archaeology, and I work on a consultant basis in support of Arches for the GCI. And I do a lot of work lately with basically moving different databases, different legacy databases into various Arches applications and Arches instances. And so I'm really interested in this for learning about the control list manager, seeing how it how it works, how it relates to search and things like that, and how people can organize concepts with it all. So I will just go in order here of what's on my screen. I'll pass it off to Rob, please.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Rob Gaston. I'm a developer with Farallon Geographics. I've worked on Arches for many years, and what I'm hoping to get out of today is feedback and thoughts from everybody on the current state of controlled list manager as we're continuing development on it and looking to further improve it. And I'll pass it to Sarah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. At least it's good morning on the West Coast here. I'm Sarah Delgadillo. I'm the lead staff person for Historic Places LA here with Los Angeles City Planning. I'm hoping to get from this meeting a greater understanding of controlled lists and how Los Angeles can be a participant in that. I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Good morning. I'm Rachel. I work for Auckland Council with our heritage database implementation. And yeah, I'm just really keen to find out more about the controlled list manager. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Maini.
Thanks, Rachel. Good morning. I'm Maini. Rachel and I both work for Auckland Council here in New Zealand. We now have almost 18-month-old live implementation of Arches. We're sitting on version 7.4.4, but we know at some stage we're going to want to move to version 8. So yeah, just really keen to find out about Controlled List Manager and how that works in comparison to the current RDM, and get some ideas of what we need to do to kind of get ourselves into the right space to move forward with that. Thank you.
And I'll popcorn it over for you, Maney. Let's do Rob Vanderbrunnen. Oh, Ron Vanderbrunnen, sorry.
Okay, struggling hard to find the unmute button. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm Ron van Branden. I'm based in Belgium, Antwerp, and working on with the Letterenhuis, so literary archive, and we're using Arches to describe nearly 450,000 objects of a much broader collection that we have described on a very detailed level. So we have developed resource description models in Arches, and using Arches for that part of our collection. So next to an archival context, we're describing another system. And I'm very interested in today's topic because we're using Arches 6.2 still, and we're next year we're definitely interested in upgrading to Arches 8.1 if possible. And I've a personal interest because I have a site documentation project for Arches description models, resource models. And I'm interested in the impact of the control lists on underlying data structures.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll pass on to Emily.
Hello, I'm Emily. I'm a professional fellow on the Arches project team at the Getty Conservation Institute. I'm the newest addition to the team, and so I'm always learning about Arches and especially interested in modeling and interested to learn more about Lingo today and also, about anyone's implementations. And I came in a little late, so apologies if I pass it to the wrong person, but I'll pass to Catalina. Have you shared yet?
Hello, I'm Catalina Soare. I work for the Ministry of Culture in Romania. We are developing a platform for cultural heritage right now, and we are interested in knowing how Arches works. And I work on the ontology, and we're trying to gather as much information as we can so far. So thank you for inviting us to this meeting.
Thank you.
Should I pass it on? I was also late. I don't know exactly who was it.
No, let's see. You could, why don't you pass it to Alina since she hasn't gone yet either?
Yes, okay, I'll pass it to Alina.
Hello, everyone. I am Alina. I work with Catalina at the same big project about cultural heritage. I work in a terminological thesauri team, and I'm eager to find how, as much as possible, about Arches and how it can support us in implementing this big project. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, great. I'll pass it over to Bruno. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. If you're having technical difficulty, you can also just put, if you want to, you can put your you can put your, oh yeah.
Can you hear me
Hello?
now? Okay.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Sorry for that.
It's okay.
I'm a freelance developer and I'm helping an archaeological project very slowly implementing an ArcGIS database to replace a legacy database. And for the moment, I'm just happy to be to stay up to date on what's going on in the ArcGIS environment.
Okay, great. I will go ahead and pass it over to Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily. I work with Open Tech Strategies, and yeah, I'm excited to learn more about controlled lists today and see what it looks like. And I will pass it to Jana.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jana. I am information scientist for Flax and Teal in Northern Ireland, and we implementing ArcGIS instances all over the world. We now have 2 implementations of version 8 in progress, so that's always fun to do side by side. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to see what's new. And I'll pass it on to Mike.
Thanks, Jana. Nice to see you all, especially those of you that had the chance to meet recently in person. I work in the UK for the Arcadia Fund, and we support a whole range of projects working to document endangered heritage sites in the Global South. And all of our projects use ArcGIS, and so I'm particularly interested to hear a little bit more about the manager and how it might be useful for their work to help them to do what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I think the last person who just joined, David, I'm guessing that you probably can't do an introduction, but I'll just do it for you. We also have David Myers on the call, who is my colleague at the Getty Conservation Institute, along with Emily. And he's worked on the ArcGIS project since the very beginning. And so, yeah, so great to have everybody here on the call. So before we plunge into this topic, I have a poll for everyone. And I think I pretty much know what everyone's going to answer, but I don't know, it might be different. So, and there's a lot of reading, apologies. I didn't know how to, I guess I could have made it a little bit less wordy, but essentially I will try to gauge what your experience is with managing controlled vocabularies in ArcGIS. So the first one is you're new, completely new, you don't know anything, you're just here to learn. Second is you've only worked with the RDM. Third is you've worked with both the RDM and the controlled list manager. And then fourth, you only know the controlled list manager, which I'd be surprised if there's anyone who is in that last boat, but I thought I would ask it anyway. So, all right. Okay. Good. I think this gives some information so that we can direct the conversation. All right, and I think we have almost everyone participating who potentially can. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. And it looks like most people have only used the reference data manager, which is not surprising. Controlled list manager is very new, and you've only used it if you've migrated to version 8. So that makes sense. Yeah, so that is the, just share the results with everybody. So that's the results. And yeah, so, and it looks like we've got some people who've used both. So that's good to know. So yeah, so again, like I said, I'm trying something different and something different than just having a presentation and then questions afterwards, because really wanting to make sure that this is a, that we are able to address what questions you might have. Especially since the situation is that ArcGIS Control List Manager is out there in the world for those who have implemented version 8, but we're kind of in this in between area where you can continue to use the RDM, we won't officially deprecate the reference data manager until version 9, which doesn't release until 2027. So we're hopefully giving you a long lead to make whatever to prepare and make whatever changes you need to make for your Arches implementation. So, and this is kind of the start of that conversation. And as always, if you have, beyond this call, if you have any questions, you can always ask them on the forum. But I think, having a meeting like this, it makes it easier to just ask questions directly. And primarily you'll be asking them of me, Rob, heavily on Rob, and Jonathan, and Eric. So yeah, so I'm gonna get started and say, and the other thing too is if you have a specific question that you want to make sure gets asked, please do drop that in the chat so that I can make sure. But I'm gonna definitely just talk a little bit about what basically about managing controlled vocabularies within Arches generally, and then talk about how that works with the reference data manager just briefly, and then how controlled list manager is different. And we'll stop, and so that's what I'll talk about. And first, because I assume that's a question that everyone has, but that's just the background. The background is how do you manage controlled vocabularies in Arches? And so how you manage that is, if you're new to Arches, you've probably been ascertaining that you probably realized that there's something new that's coming, which is called the controlled list manager for managing controlled vocabularies. But currently, we have a controlled vocabulary manager called the reference data manager within Arches, and that is integrated with the data modeling, so that when you create your data model in Arches, you're able then to connect it to a controlled vocabulary so that you can utilize that as a drop-down list within your data model. So that's generally how that works in Arches, that you have basically a manager, a kind of a module that manages the controlled vocabularies and within Arches, and then that links to the models that you create within Arches. And then you also are able to see your controlled vocabularies when you are searching for data within Arches, because then you're able to search against your controlled vocabularies. So it affects search, it affects your data modeling. So generally that's how that works. But and I'll show that. I'll go and share my screen. And screen. All right. Do you all see the Arches for Science demo? Yeah. Okay. So this is the current reference data manager, where you're able to manage different thesauri schema. So you've got, and this is for the Arches for Science application, and you have different schemes here, and then so you have two tabs, thesauri and collections. The thesauri tab basically manages your hierarchies and is something like, if you are managing thesauri, this is something that you would need to make sure that you're defining all your terms, and it's really just kind of a one-stop shop for managing your thesauri there. And then there's another tab here called collections, which is how you connect different terms in your thesauri with your modeling. So basically you're defining what terms end up in collections that are associated with different nodes in your thesauri, in your models. So you have these two tabs in the reference data manager. Those people who use it understand this, but if you're new, just know that this is functionality that we had. This is basically what we're transitioning out of. And the controlled list manager is different because essentially what we've done is we're eliminating this tab, the thesauri tab, and now we'll only have this collections tab, which basically will then manage, here's what this looks like, the control list manager. And it's essentially managing all your controlled lists. So anything that was formerly a collection will now be a controlled list plus. If you are using the domain data type, that you'll also manage that in here. And anything that used to be a concept data list, a concept list type, will no longer be that. It'll be now reference data type. So there will no longer be domain data type or concept. They'll all be encompassed in this reference data type. A reference data type. And so in a nutshell, that's the difference, is that the reference data manager will go away eventually, and you will no longer have this ability to manage the thesauri in this way. And the main reason for this is because we are currently in development for Arches Lingo, which will assume a lot of this, and actually it'll supercharge this to a really amazing degree. But we're actually not going to talk about Lingo today because that is currently still in development. We'll just be focusing on controlled list manager, which then is really this collections tab if you're used to using the reference data manager. So I see some things in the chat. Yep. Okay, cool. And just looking at question. Okay. That's a very technical question, and thank you, Rob, for answering it in the chat. So I'm going to stop here and ask if there are any questions about this concept, that basically the controlled list manager is now just this collections piece. Is that clear to everyone? Yeah? Okay. If you change your mind about whether it's clear or not, feel free to let me know. Okay, so that's the first hurdle, and just as a reminder for for people who don't know, if you're so this is the Arches Modeling Interest Group, and so part of what we do is talk about Arches resource models, how to create them, and I just assumed that you've created an Arches resource model before, but I'm going to remove that assumption and show you essentially how this works. So in the Arches Designer, where you create your resource models, let's go here, and you create, and I'll go into this particular resource model. You're getting a sneak peek into Rascals. This is your resource model, where you're basically defining your data model and for a particular entity. And in this case, this is for collection or set. And you see here that you can define different groups of data. There's things like defining name, or you can add a statement about this particular collection or set. But in regards to controlled vocabularies, what we're focused on are the particular nodes that reference your controlled vocabularies. So if you use the CDOC-CRM, you'll know that you're very familiar with the E55, which usually signals a type, which would signal some sort of controlled list or controlled vocabulary. And in defining that, you'll notice here that you're able to select a data type. In this case, it's reference, because this is already an instance where you, yes, thank you, Eric. This is already an instance that's been defined, and that is using the control list manager. And you see here that you're able to select the data type of reference. And once you do that, that means then you have access to select an actual controlled list to be connected to this node or field. And so that controlled list, then you can select which controlled list you want to associate with this particular node. So that's generally how that works in the reference data in Arches version 7.6 and earlier. The data type you would have selected would have been concept or domain, but now it'll all be blanket reference anytime you're referring any node in your data model to a list. All right, so that's just like very, very quick on that. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask additional questions about that. So yeah, are there any? So we're moving to reference. So we've got the reference data manager, and that's how this normally works. Now going to controlled list manager. There are different attributes here, and I actually want to stop and say that if you are so just looking at your question, it was a question here. Nope. Okay, got it. All right. So now controlled list manager. I think if I'm going to actually ask, I'm going to ask Rob. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Rob, because I've been talking for a long time. To see if you could just kind of go over some of the features of the controlled list manager.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, maybe if you don't mind. Well, you've already done that, so I can share my screen maybe. And I'll try to make this easy. I don't know, this is going to be maybe tall and awkward to look at, but I'll also try to make this a little bit bigger maybe. I guess before I maybe get into the features of the controlled list manager, I want to kind of take a step back and maybe tell a little story or history of like how we got here. And probably unsurprising to any of you who know me and what I work on, it's related to the Lingo project. So when we started working on Lingo, we found ourselves in this sort of predicament, I guess you could say. It became somewhat circular because we were trying to model Lingo models as Arches resource models, and use that to ostensibly, at least our initial thought was that will be the new way you manage your reference data. But then we found that what we needed was and at the time we were still calling Lingo the new RDM. So the talk internal to the team was like, we need an RDM for the RDM, because we needed a way to make references to things like SCOS things. So I can show you like here. These are, this is a SCOS scope note, for instance. So we would need to be able to define a note that's associated to a term as being a SCOS scope note. But so then it was this sort of predicament, like I said, where are we going to try to model those things in Lingo? Well, we're not really managing those authority data, are we? Right? SCOS is managed authoritatively by the W3C, so that's really not our project or our work. That's not our authority data, but we want to be able to make reference to them. And we realized that that's really kind of actually pretty much universally how this should work, right? Authority data are managed by an authority and then referenced by somebody who's managing some other data, or some body that's managing some other data. So like Arches for Science as an example, right? I don't actually know what terms you're using in Arches for Science, but I'm sure there's probably some AAT terms or other things that Arches for Science wants to use, but Arches for Science is not managing the AAT thesauri data, right? They just want to be able to make reference to them. And sometimes when you're making reference to things in your local system, the authority data are insufficient or are maybe locally not preferred, or like oftentimes what people find is they have very specific local desires about how to label things, right? That are not maybe in line with what the authority has defined as the preferred terms, right? So the intention behind the controlled list manager is to offer a tool to reference authority data that would be primarily being managed by some external authority, but you reference them via a URI, which is why I highlighted this thing, right? The URI is is the key in the controlled list world, and that allows you to make reference to a thing that could be managed anywhere. It could be an Arches thing. It could be anything, right? And so that's kind of the ethos, I guess, if you will, of the controlled list manager. It's also intended to be somewhat more flexible and simple than the RDM is. Like the RDM, you can only compose your collections from the SORI that you've defined. And that was sort of why we had the domain data type. But the domain data type has some problems, I'll just say. One of which is that you can't share domains. Domains are defined for each node, and then you're just like fixed to that node. So if you have like a domain that's simple, like yes, no, maybe, or whatever, just some terms that you're using locally that are well understood, just on their face, and you define that in multiple nodes, you're actually creating separate lists, and you have to create that list every time, and there's no association between those things. Like yes in this node is not going to have the same primary key as yes in another node. So the system isn't going to know that like your intent is that they're the same thing. So I'll just show you quickly what that looks like. So again, this is intended to be significantly simpler than like how you used to have to do this in the RDM. If I wanted to create that list, I could just come down here and add a new list, call it whatever I wanted to call it. I don't know, this isn't a great name, but because that's the things I'm going to add to it. And then I can come in here and I can add some terms. And it's intended to be quick here, right? Like these are going to be pref labels by default that are in the system language. So I could add additional languages if I wanted to, right? Like if I wanted to come in here and add another preferred label, say I don't have languages in my system, so I can't actually add it in Spanish, but I could add another preferred label in another language, or I could add alt labels, like yep, or something. I actually deleted that. That was my bad. I should have clicked this. And what you get with these labels is the search capabilities, right? So I can now search for this reference in my business data using any of these labels that are defined here. Another thing that's important about controlled lists is that they are hierarchical. They needn't be, but they can be. The hierarchy can be used just like as a structural thing, so that you can as a way to sort of guide users through the list, or they could actually be like hierarchical relationships, like you would see in authority data management, like whole part relationships, or type subtype relationships. And one way that we see this being used, and we've already been using it in this way, is you might want to actually be able to search, as you can right now in the RDM, on those hierarchical, like those authoritative hierarchical relationships, like type, subtype, whole part. Oftentimes, what you want to be able to do is search on, say, a parent item in that hierarchy and get hits for all of the children, right? Because the children are like subtypes or parts of the parent, so it makes sense that you would get hits on those things, right? And so the way we see that being used is you might come over here, and I don't have a SCOS file handy, so I'm not going to actually import one, but you might import a SCOS file. So SCOS is, SCOS RDF XML is a common way to express knowledge organization. you might import the entire authoritative hierarchy, excuse me, and then you could use that to search on. And so I have mocked up a little example of this here. It's quite abstract because I'm using lingo things here. So feel free to ask me, whatever, stop me if this is confusing at all. But I've got a hierarchy here for scheme types. This comes from the AAT. This is a little subset of AAT. Scheme types has a child of controlled vocabularies, which has a child of authority files, which has a couple of children here, name and subject authority files. There's also controlled lists, indexing languages, subject headings. So, in Lingo, we want to be able to make reference to these things. And we use this scheme types as a controlled list in Lingo. But to try to kind of simplify this, I made a new list up here called authority file types. I can even show you how I did that. I'll add another new list and call it authority types 2. I'll just delete this afterwards. But one thing you can do is you can, after loading that SCOS data, from the actual authority, I might want to create a simple drop-down list that just has a few select items from it, right? Like say I'm going to create a model for authority files, and I want to type them just with these two items, these two references, right? Name and subject authority files. I could come in here and I could copy this over to here. And now I've got name authority file there, and we need to implement a multi-select here, by the way, which we will do, but have not done yet. And now I've got it.
Rob, I just wanted to interject that was not functionality we had in our old RDMs to be able to copy and paste. And I know that people who have used it are probably like, their minds are being blown right now that you can copy and paste.
And you can copy and paste. You can also, by the way, you can selectively copy and paste the entire hierarchy. So if I wanted to say copy control vocabularies, I can copy that, and this little switch here controls whether the children get included or not in my copy. I could come down here and I could copy it here. And now I've got that, all of those, because I left that switch on, right? I'm just going to delete this. And it warns me that I'm going to delete its children as well. That's all good. Where was I? Sorry, I was just looking at the chat. So what I'm now going to do is show you how the searching works, because like I said, one of the important parts about the hierarchies is being able to do this hierarchical searching, right? Some of your lists, you might not want to have that hierarchical searching capability implemented, because like I said, you might just have some sort of structural, have a hierarchy that is really just meant to help guide the user through the list, rather than actually representing real hierarchical relationships, right? That you want to be able to search on. And some you might want to, and typically it's probably going to be the actual authoritative hierarchies that you would want to be searchable, because like I said, those are whole part or subtype relationships. And so what we've done is we've added this flag, and we need to get the signposting right here, because I think it's still quite unclear to an end user what this is about. But what this is about being able to do hierarchical searches, right? So because scheme types here comes from the AAT, these are all type-subtype relationships here. I want to make this searchable so that when I do a search and I search for the item controlled vocabularies, I would get hits on any authority files that have reference to these things down here, right? And this is all going to work because the URIs are the keys, right? So I could actually come down here and I could change how this is labeled in my drop-down list, and I'd still get hits from searches on these parent items up here, so long as the keys, which is the URI here, are the same in both, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think let
So
me
what
just
does that
stop.
look like?
I'm going to stop you
Oh,
quickly.
go ahead.
Just want to say that for everyone, when we have the thesauri tab, and that was kind of managing and the thesauri and lingo, instead of doing that management, it's in control list. We're basically, as Rob said earlier, we are moving that responsibility for managing the URIs and the lists ultimately to either an external source or an Arches Lingo implementation. And this list item URI will refer to that. And if there is no external authority, then Arches will generate its own URI here, correct?
Yeah. Yep, that's a great point. So I just pounded out those yes, no, maybes, and you'll see the URI here is just a local URI to my Arches. It's running on localhost, so it's not very useful. But this is just the actual primary key that was generated here locally in Arches, and we use that as the URI unless you have authoritative ones. SCOS RDF XML includes URIs, so when we can import URIs directly from SCOS RDF XML. Lingo generates URIs and exports SCOS RDF XML. Hopefully you're getting the picture here. I created, I'm actually gonna delete this authority types too because I'm not using that. I created a model, which I'll show you, that is dirt simple, called authority files. I don't know, I was literally just doing this as we were introducing each other. Sorry if I seemed a little disengaged. So I created an authority file with a card for information. It's maybe easier to look at the card. Information, a type, and a name. And the type is the maybe more interesting one here because that's using the reference data type and it's pointing to my authority files dropdown, right? So it just has those two entries in it, name and subject authority file. But like I said, we've made the scheme types list here searchable, right? So what I'm going to be able to do in search is actually find those references in my term search. So this is, if you use RDM and concepts, this should be familiar, right? You can type in a thing here like authority files, and you get term matches. These are strings from the Arches data. You get references now as well. And by the way, these labels are mutable. This is just the label we use by default. You can also, like in this 8.0 period, you can use both references and or concepts in your term search. It's all configurable. I won't get into the details there, just trust me, that's true. And so you can see here these references. These are the items from my searchable list, right? So every one of the items in my searchable list will show up as references here that I can search on. And so I have created a few authority files here. Ignore pub, that's a lingo concept. I've created a few authority files. I've given them names just so it's easy to see which is which. This one is a name authority file, my name authority file, and you can see it's a name authority file. And these two are subject authority files, type subject authority file. So if I search on, I can search on like subject authority file, right? And like I could just get that one. Great, I got just the two results, right? Or I could search on I noticed there's another subject headings. This should get me none, right? Because none of those, if you recall, which you maybe don't because I did that kind of fast, scheme types, controlled vocabularies, authority files. So those are the parents that I should get hits on for these two, right? So if I search on authority files rather than name or subject or controlled vocabularies or scheme types, I should be able to get all three of my hits back, right? Because it's doing that hierarchical searching. So I'll type in controlled vocabularies. And now you can see I get those three hits back. So just to demonstrate how we've preserved this hierarchical searching capability. It's a bit different here now, and it's somewhat more deliberate, right? You need to specify which hierarchies you actually want to search on, but then you can get hits across any list as long as the URIs in the controlled list that you're using to make references are matching. And I will pause for a question from Mei-Ni.
Thanks. Sorry, of course it would be me, wouldn't it? Just going back to what you were saying about the subtype searching, if I've understood correctly, let me see, get rid of the hand. If I can share my screen, I'll just show you something that's we've got currently in our RDM, how we've organized our list. Oh gosh, it is indeed too early for this. No, wrong thing. Okay, this is not going to go well for me, I think, this morning. Now I have to figure out how to unshare.
You can see the RDM if that's what you're trying to show me, Nee.
That is what I'm trying to show. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
Can you still see the RDM?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now I just need to move things so I can see my RDM. Right. And you can see my mouse, hopefully.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So we've got these concepts here where basically all this different type of milling is a subtype of industrial. So in order to make it work within the RDM in version 7, we've had to prefix the concept with that, I guess, the header type. So if I've understood correctly from Rob, in the new controlled list manager, we would be able to create a list term called industrial and then put some subtypes under it, which would be this flax milling, flour milling, and so on. And then if you searched for industrial, if we set up the search correctly, if you search for industrial, you would get hits on anything that's underneath it. But obviously, if you wanted, say, flour milling, you could search for flour milling and only return those. Is that correct? Yes.
Yep.
That would make life so much easier, because at the moment, if you want to find all the ones that are under industrial, you have to search for every single one of these individually and add those to your search as part of that advanced search. Okay, that's wonderful.
Yep, that's exactly it. And that's what we're trying to achieve here, right? We're trying to find the balance of making this, like, as Eric very kindly referred to it, ergonomic, but also flexible, right? And so, like I said, it's a bit more deliberate, but it really allows you to very custom tailor the exact hierarchies that you want to be searchable and the exact lists that you want to, show up in your drop-down lists. And you can, as long as the URIs match across those items, the system will know that they're the same thing.
Right. Now seeing I'm talking, hope you don't mind. I did have another question. Most of my questions you've actually answered about the alternate labels, and we can still have those, and you can have labels in different languages, which we've seen from the screen that Annabelle and Rob shared. And then my last question here is, so if we start off and we're not using Lingo when it's available, but then later on we make a decision that we do need to use Lingo, do you think that is something that we could add on, or is that not how the system is being designed?
No, I think you absolutely could. The one thing you'll have to be thoughtful maybe about up front is what URIs you use. And I mean, you could always do that migration later, right? But it's like, if you use the local URIs, you're then going to load those data into Lingo. You're going to create real URIs for those things, and then you're going to have to load them back into your system, and you'll have to reconcile. It's like a migration, right? So Lingo will accept incoming URIs. So if you have, if you know what the URIs should be, which hard for me to tell you. But if you know what the URIs should be, then you could assign those in the controlled list manager and then load those into Lingo later if you wanted to, like, manage those authority data in Lingo.
So I guess to give you the background, how it is currently here in New Zealand is we have our lists, particularly like site type, which was this list that I was just showing you, which we at Auckland Council are using, but other organisations that also manage heritage data here in New Zealand, we're all a bit fragmented, shall we say. We all have our own terms for things. So at this point in time, we don't have a consensus like, for example, they do in the UK with Historic England with all those fish thesauri, where people are using the same terms to mean the same things. But we're hoping to move that way here in New Zealand, but we're not there yet, shall we say. So at the point that we get there, at that point, we would want to use the lingo feature. But in the meantime, I think we're all going to probably have different terms that we're using in the controlled list. So it sounds like we would be looking at doing a migration and we'd have some issues around that. But thank you.
Yeah.
I will just contemplate that. Thank you very much. I'm done. Thanks for entertaining my questions as well.
No. Thank you for asking them. And Mimi,
course.
I was just going to say this, that I mean, I think as Rob described, that there is a way to do that. But to me, just the non-technology side of my brain is like, yes, I think the harder thing is going to be getting the consensus outside of the technology on what those terms are.
Definitely. And that's one of the reasons why we're sort of thinking, well, initially we would just go it with our terms, otherwise you get stuck and you can never move forward. And then as those discussions happen and things get resolved, at that point we would look at using lingo to try and get some standardization to the country. But that is probably even longer than some of these data migration from legacy systems issues that we have previously dealt with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rob, I think maybe now would be a good time to talk about migration. So
I know.
Yeah, because we just talked about that. So I think just for everyone to know that that migration patterns have been developed for two of the three things that you're going to need to migrate. Rob, what are those things?
Yeah, so there are at least three things that at least two things that you'll need to do, and maybe three things that you'll need to do depending on the state of your system or your project. So one thing is to take all of your reference data from the old RDM and pipe it on over into controlled lists. That's done. It's a script. You just run the script and it does its thing. And so it's a tool that you can use to migrate your reference data into controlled lists sort of at will. The other thing that you'll want to do, you'll want to do this probably at the same time as that, is migrate your graph models to move from I didn't want to use the word migrate again, from concept data types to reference data types, right? And that's also done. So those two things are just like, scripts that you can run at will to migrate those things. The thing that we haven't done is finish the script to migrate the business data. So that would be the third thing that you might need to do. So if you have business data in your system, that's not quite available yet. So right now, as far as like, there's probably this question in many people's minds, like, when should I move to controlled lists? Like Annabelle said, you're not compelled to move to controlled lists until version 9, until you move to version 9, and version 9 doesn't come out until 2027. So we have a good long while where you can stay on RDM if you choose to. And if you have business data, you probably will, for now, want to stay on the RDM unless you are so compelled by the controlled lists to say, I'm going to take on migrating my own business data, which you could do, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because we're working on an automated path for that. And the target for that, by the way, is that we want to have that available at least by September of next year, which is when 8.2, which is the long-term stability release on the 8 life cycle, comes out. And so our intention there is, we know that a lot of people are going to stay on 8.2 for at least a couple of years. That kind of gives you that is the the point at which we expect most people to do this, to take on this migration, right? From the long-term stability, we know that a lot of people tend to go from LTS release to LTS release. So we envision that a lot of people will go from 8.2 to 9.2, right? When 9.2 comes out, which is, I think, in 2028 at that point. That gives you an idea of what the window looks like. And you can migrate at any time. If you're starting a new project, I would absolutely say start with controlled lists. And you can even migrate, if you want to use the same reference data from another project, you can migrate those RDM data straight into controlled lists and it'll be easy. Or even if you want to use models from another project. But if you have business data, you'll probably want to hang tight on that until that migration is out. So probably along the lines of the long-term stability release 8.2, and then migrate your business data at that time. And then really kind of at will, right? Migrate your business data whenever it makes sense to between 8.2 and 9.2. When you upgrade to 9.2, you'll need to be on controlled lists. So you'll have to have done that migration at some point.
Yeah. So everyone, you have some time, but you should plan for this, because I know that you'll definitely want to take advantage of some of the things coming up with version 8.2 and then 9 eventually. So yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Eric.
Sorry, and this is for you and Rob also. Can you search for a URI in the controlled list manager to see where it's used, so you could see all the sort of list items where that URI is actually used? Can you do a URI search basically?
We were working. I don't know that we built it out yet. I don't think we have, but we were going to build into the advanced search, or we are going to build into the advanced search, like the ability to search for a URI here. That's searching for business data, which is not quite what you're saying. I think what you're saying is in the lists. And I think we need better searching tools internal to controlled list manager. It's a really good point. Right now, all we have is you can search on terms here,
okay,
and find them in, but we can't search on URIs here. But it'd probably be easy for us to add that in this same spot here, and that's a great suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And just a reminder that as with everything Arches, we want feedback. If there's new features or improvements to any to Arches platform, Arches extension, anything, that's something that we love. We love feedback from you. We want to hear from you, because if it's if what we're doing isn't serving you all, then why are we doing it? So we want to make sure that it's that you all have a voice, and that that you make sure that you let us know what comments and feedback you have on what we're doing in development. So yeah, okay, we're almost at time. And I realized that I didn't look ahead of time to see when the next meeting is. And I should have done that. But so this is a good reminder for me to let you all know that if you haven't signed up for the Arches modeling interest group mailing list, do that, because I do send out a meeting request for that, for these meetings, and with other relevant information regarding the group. So please do that if you haven't done that already. Is a demo instance foreseeable in the future? A demo instance for Lingo, or a demo instance? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, sorry. It's just to have a chance to try it out, controlled lists.
Oh, I see. So, yeah, no, actually, that's a good question. I think something I have on my list of things to do is to have a demo instance where you could try out modeling, where you can use Arches Designer, and presumably with that would be version 8, and that would also include controlled lists. So that's on my 2026 list of things to do. Not just, so that as everyone who's been involved in this community for a long time, you all know that it's kind of hard to get started with arches and figure out modeling without having, and then having to install arches first to figure out the modeling piece, especially if you're just evaluating it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'd like to get a modeling demo up that includes control lists in version 8.
And
But,
just as a quick plug here and this is whatever, maybe a more technical angle than is appropriate here, but controlled lists is released. It's in version 1.0.1. I sent a link to the to this page in Python package index, and there's documentation on how to get started using it if you want to try and engage with it in your project, even just sort of dabbling, not actually maybe using it yet, but just trying it out, locally. That's available.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. If you V8 demo, that's my hope, Manny. But anyway, so sign up for the list if you want to be, or just make sure to keep your eyes on the forum to find out when the next meeting is. It's basically going to be in 3 months from now, probably in end of March or sometime in March, the next meeting, and we'll probably be talking about Lingo. That's probably my guess, because that's when Arches Lingo is going to be released in March. So I know, sorry, Rob. But yeah, no. But if you want to continue the conversation, again, our forum is the place to do that. And we actually changed the tag for conversations about modeling to arches-modeling, so that it encompasses all modeling discussion. All right, everyone. Thank you for attending, and for those who celebrate, have a happy holiday.
Thanks, everybody.
And
Thanks
a good New Year.
Thanks. Bye.
See
Bye
y'all.
all.